Well, welcome back, Marina, to the 5th edition of ACLU on the Hill. The tempo of the session is picking up as we get closer to the finish line. Later nights, earlier mornings, is that what you've been experiencing?
Oh, for sure. As the session advances, there's just this attempt to try and pack more into every remaining day, and we're down to the final 14 days now. So
and still quite a few big bills that have just come out or might even come out in the future.
That's
right.
Right.
One of those is you have a hearing on Friday morning. That is the conversion therapy bill, HB 399. Can you tell us a little bit about that bill, what it does, and why it sort of made it into a hearing this year?
Yeah, it's a pretty big and important piece of legislation. There was a press conference earlier this session to announce the bill, to reveal the sponsors of the legislation, 2 Republicans, one in the House and one in the Senate. And what the bill does is it bans this really harmful practice of trying to convert or change somebody's sexual orientation or gender identity. So really a great bill in terms of helping to make kids in particular, because the bill focuses on minors only and not adults who are LGBT, feel comfortable being just who they are, and not allowing for the practice of therapists to try and change either their sexual orientation or gender identity.
And there's quite a sort of a diverse group of people backing this bill. Is that right? At the press conference, you had groups like Equality Utah that have been pushing this for a long time. You were there, but who else did you see sort of standing up for this bill?
You know, there are a lot of people who are very concerned about the high suicide rate in Utah and in the country generally, and the concern that particularly with some of these populations, transgender kids in particular, the suicide rate is really, really quite staggeringly high. So those folks were there also supporting the legislation. I know the LDS Church has been involved in the crafting of the language, so that's an interesting actor to be involved in this conversation as well. And as I mentioned, there were a lot of Republican lawmakers who were present to present the bill coming out as well.
So it has a first hearing in the House tomorrow. Still got to get through the House, the Senate, the full
There's
template
a long way to go,
of
yes.
the legislature. How do you think it's going to go this year?
You know, we'll have to see. I mean, the fact that it's even getting a hearing, I think, is a really positive sign. You know, time is not our friend at this point. There's only 14 days and a long way for that bill to go. So we'll just have to see if there's enough time this session. And if not, at least it starts the conversation for a future year.
That's right. We're getting to that point where even good bills can run out of time based on the constraints. Let's talk about another bill now. This is coming up also soon for a hearing. It's the workplace discrimination bill. I believe it's HB, is it 390?
Yes.
That is a bill from Representative Eric Hutchings, an idea that we've been kicking around for a while. What does that bill do? How does it approach workplace discrimination in Utah, and how would it improve things for Utah workers?
Sure. So right now we have in place laws that protect employees who are discriminated against in the workplace because of, for example, their race, their gender, their religious beliefs, etc. Unfortunately, the law in Utah mirrors the law at the federal level and only kicks in if an employer has 15 employees or more. So that means if you work at a small workplace with less than 15 employees, you can be discriminated against on one of those bases, and you have no legal remedy, no ability to go to court, no ability to sue to get damages for discriminatory behavior that you experience in the workplace.
There's just no protection for those smaller employers.
That's correct. And, you know, Utah landed on 15 because that's where the federal government landed. The federal government landed at 15 because that's what could be agreed to at the time that bill was negotiated many years ago now at this point. Since that time, many states have recognized that 15 is an arbitrary number and have dropped that number down. And so that's what the point of this new piece of legislation would be to lower that employee threshold down so that smaller businesses are also covered by the same sorts of discrimination protections as larger businesses.
So this bill doesn't change the status or the classifications of discrimination, merely lowers the threshold, brings that number down to include more Utahns who are employed by small businesses.
Yeah, and so interestingly, if this bill were to pass, the ACLU would finally be subject to workplace discrimination protections. Right now, our own employer is not subject to these sorts of
That's right. We have about 13
requirements.
Staff members. We'd be under the threshold.
That's right.
All right, and let's talk about one more bill, and that's a bill that sort of came out of the 2018 elections a little bit, but then again is also an idea that has been introduced years and years in a row, but really never gotten any traction. But this time, it got out of committee for the first time, and that's the
Right.
straight ticket voting bill. I believe it's HB 299. Representative Patrice Arendt is pushing that bill, but she's pushing it this year with a little bit more wind behind her. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so Representative Arendt is running this bill. She's run it in previous sessions to ban straight party voting. Utah is one of, I think, just a handful of states, in fact, that allow a voter at the top of their ballot to just check if they would like to vote for all Republicans or all Democrats, rather than going through and individually evaluating whether they want to vote for each candidate. And the reasoning behind wanting to sort of do away with this practice is that in some ways it actually deprives a voter of the ability to really think about, who they want to vote for.
Yeah.
Deprives them of the ability to sort of decide, I'm more concerned about the candidate rather than the particular party affiliation. There was a really interesting debate during the committee hearing on this bill. Interestingly, Representative Arendt was joined by Representative Craig Hall to give sort of a bipartisan presentation, which I think was very helpful, because in previous years I think this was sort of viewed as being slanted towards one particular party as opposed to the other, and so I don't think got a lot of traction. This year, having a bipartisan presentation, the bill did indeed make it out of committee, and so is now going to be debated on the floor.
And one other factor could be that when you have a ballot that has many initiatives, like we had in 2018, you check that box for straight ticket voting, you might not flip the page and actually see the judicial candidates, the nonpartisan candidates, and the initiatives and other questions that are on that ballot. So it sort of allows people to be a little bit more engaged with their ballot than simply just checking one box and walking away.
Absolutely.
Let's just follow up quickly on some legislation we talked about in previous weeks that have actually had some movement. One of them would be Representative Stephanie Pitcher's labor and delivery shackling bill.
Yeah.
That made it out of committee this week, isn't that right?
That's right. Great news on that bill. It did pass unanimously out of the Judiciary Committee, and so is on its way to the floor. I don't believe that there were any voices of opposition speaking against the bill. The Sheriff's Association, in fact, said that they were now supportive of the legislation. So things are looking for that bill moving forward.
And another bill that we've been supporting is Representative Hutchings' bill on misdemeanor time frame changes, the 364-day bill.
Right.
That bill also had some success, I believe, on the House floor. Is that right?
It sure did. It was, again, a unanimous vote on the House floor. I believe there were 70 votes in favor. Really excellent piece of legislation. It's now headed over to the Senate, where it will be heard in committee, most likely Monday.
That's terrific news. Unanimous votes all around.
That's
right. Good. Thank you for joining us, Marina, here for week 5 of ACLU on the Hill. We'll check in with you. Hopefully we'll still be standing up by week 6. Still probably a lot will have happened by then. So thank you for staying with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
You bet.